Fat Boys, Week 10 was a weird one in a lot of ways. We definitely had some decent performances, certainly some surprising performances. There were some receivers, especially in our top five, that nobody had. Then there were some people who went off and a couple people who really, really went off. And I know the Thursday Nighter, it's so much more fun when it's actually a super offensive game, unless you're the guy who's playing that guy, who we will get to in a second. Should also just mention about the beard, maybe you kind of recognize it is November, and that is something my school is trying to get into here. So if you also remember from back in the day, if you were around when I did it, I'm keeping the beard for another week or so because I really try and minimize when I'm around kids how much I just have the lip worm. So you'll see it probably within a week or two videos. So there's something to look forward to. Anywho, enough about my facial hair. Let's get on to the NFL. The title might be slightly nihilistic, sure, but this week for me, nothing really matters. And football stuff aside, more of it's because, and just full disclosure, I think a lot of people know this, but this little part, the part that talks about football, this goes in all of the videos. Everything else is league specific except for this. I don't redo an NFL one just for each video. So there's a lot of people listening here who are educators and international or non, people in education in general, some admin, etc. But even people that aren't, there's a high percentage that maybe you have kids. So perhaps you can empathize with the week that is report card comment writing week, because I spend the whole week doing it to find out that, nothing really matters. Most of my colleagues just use AI now, so maybe I should just put all of the feedback that actually matters that I've given them over the year and make a little word cloud and put it in a 8x10 and give it to parents. Maybe that would be better than doing this. Anyways, this is literally the only thing I'm doing all week that is not report card comment based or work based, I should say. So I'll get right to it. This translates as well into football and fantasy football. If you were watching last week, there were some great games and a lot of people were excited. Maybe you did your research and you thought you'd kind of pick, were the Chiefs going to fall to the Broncos, and you had it and you were right and it was going to happen, and then it was a blocked field goal kick. And I'm not getting into the conspiracy theories that have essentially been debunked about Mahomes talking to the referee and asking for help, because apparently that is not what happened. Shock, I think the Chiefs of all teams know that hate is going to hate, and when you're undefeated and you've won the Super Bowl last year, people are going to want to make reasons why you're winning other than you're just actually pretty decent. But that could have been a huge game, huge upset, maybe on the Sunday Nighter. Maybe you're thinking I was going to see two offenses in Detroit and Houston, or two teams in general that were supposed to be heavily touted, should be a well-played game, only to watch 8 interceptions decide it. Insane. 5-3. Goff and CJ Stroud, these are not supposed to be slouch of QBs. And if you watch some of them were not the best efforts. And if you were thinking, is this an NFL record? Maybe you did your homework. 8 in a game can't just be a record, because actually 8 as an individual, there has been a quarterback by the name of Jim Hardy who had 8 interceptions. Although he is so old, I know that's a joke. How old is he? He is so old, his Wikipedia cover profile page is hand-drawn. No jokes there. That's legit. But that game ends up getting decided, as Collingsworth kind of said, because they didn't paint or repaint the goalposts, because the 2 field goals to tie and to go ahead were by such a small narrow, it literally just looked like it just inched by. So you could have had all of these predictions only to really come down to a couple big plays. And in fantasy, we saw the exact same thing. Maybe you did your waiver wire pickups, you did your research, you did your kind of bye-week strategy to make sure you had the best chance to win. And then you watched the Thursday night game, and maybe you played Burrow, or even worse, Jamar Chase was on the other team, or even worse, both. And it didn't matter. The game was over before you barely checked the scores on your Friday morning, or for me when I watched them on Friday night here. So again, we're walking into week 11, and this is when it matters the most. Maybe there's some teams who have clinched. I don't think there's any teams who are technically mathematically out of it yet, but they will be as of this week if they start losing, or they keep losing, I should say. So this obviously really, really matters, and yet nothing matters. Maybe pick someone up on the waiver wire. Take a shot. Maybe that person that's been on your bench is going to score points or score 50 points. Who knows? At this stage, your guess is as good as mine. Statistically, if we look at the records, probably better. Anyway, let's get on to our scores. We were promised an epic 1 versus 2 battle here, and we kind of didn't get it. As Jake put it himself on the Thursday, you're like, well, there goes that week. 53 plus from anybody, anytime, is going to just be a crusher. And if you actually look all the way through, Mark did fine after that, but he had no one else on the top five. Wasn't really like a full team effort. You don't need a full team effort when you have someone scoring 50 plus, especially on the Thursday. Just that mental beat down. Jake put up an okay fight at times, but realistically, you know what? If you're going to have a stinker, you might as well have a stinker when your opponent goes off like this, because nobody was in the top five of any positions for Jake's on the bench or on his team itself. So you might as well get it out of the way, because some of these guys have obviously had hot runs. So wouldn't worry too much, Jake. You still got the game lead now. Points will take a look at where you sit there. You're still sitting on top. You're still earning the top spot and the bye. And we only have 4 weeks left, so now's that time where you want to start pushing for those wins to see if you can clinch it in. Mark, this is a big statement win for you. It's number 2 in the league. Obviously, the points scored are going to help you out. How much? I guess we'll see when we get to standings. B really needed this win to put himself back into that playoff hunt, and he certainly got it. We could go through and say, yeah, sure, his defense was the defense for in Minnesota, but let's be honest, it was all running backs for B. He had the running back 1 and 2. Bijan being obviously the coveted one since the beginning, Chuba being probably the best waiver wire pickup, and someone we'll talk about at the end of the year for stuff like that, and that was more than enough. Whalen put up a bit of a fight at times. Laporta, you got to be happy at least he was getting the ball. He's kind of been the odd person out. He was our tight end 3, but aside from that, everyone did, Thomas was kind of a bust for you. Dobbins didn't do what I think a lot of us assumed he would against Tennessee, who had a weirdly stingy defense, and you can't love to see CJ throw that many picks on a Sunday night. But like I just said, if you're going to get a stinker, you might as well get him out of the way. It wasn't horrible, but it certainly wasn't your best. And now that you fall to 4 and 6, you are going to be one of the teams I'm talking about later that's certainly not even close to out of it. B only has 1 more win than you, and he's in the playoff spot. But with all the people in between, you're definitely going to want to go on and put a couple games in a row together to get on that run. Speaking of which, we got 2 now 500 teams we're going to see. They are not alone. One's in the playoffs and one is not. Team Lamborough, you had the second part there. Lamb didn't really do as much as you might want him to do, although if you look at the total number of yards that Dallas had, he actually had still a fairly high percentage, but that ain't pretty. The crazy thing about this is our quarterback 1 versus our quarterback 2, so it wasn't super intimidating here for Justin to see Ben go out and Burrow to put up the number 1 spot, because he was only a few points behind him. Now, he didn't end up coming back, and certainly the predicteds were still pretty tight on this one all the way through. Ben, though, did walk into the Monday Nighter with a 59% chance to win, and he held on. Kelsey was our tight end 1, so you got to love that, Justin. But other than that, you just needed that 1 or 2 more pungent performances, whereas not only did Ben get Burrow, he got Brown, who was our running back 4. So even though they're on the same team, not a bad little combo there. Seeing the points on the bench, Eckler certainly would have helped you. He was our running back 5 on the week, so that would have been a decent play, but who are you going to play him over top of? Maybe Sutton, and that's not the guy that would have helped you out. So just wasn't in the cards, but still, you're hanging on for points total scored. You're hanging in there, Justin, with your 5 and 5. Ben, obviously, you're right on the doorstep, so let's see what next week brings. Not at all trying to overhype my game, but this was the Monday night matchup, not miracle, because we were legitimately 50-50 going in. I did take a screenshot, and I can prove it. I was up 1.7 points, and I had Hill, and he obviously was down and had Williams. I was kind of thinking I was going to lose this one, to be completely honest with you. This took Williams to break his touchdown streak. He's had a touchdown, I think, in all games pretty much so far this year, except for this one, and that's what I effectively needed. He scores a touchdown, I lose by a couple points. So it was a waste of a couple good performances. You did have the quarterback 3 in Hurts, and this was actually a defensive battle. You had the defense 1, I had the defense 3. I also had Connor, who was our running back 3. Aside from that, though, I did have a massive underperformance, I'd say, at the quarterback position. I wasn't super happy with, but I was able to hold on. Hopefully now I've survived a little bit. I don't think I'm necessarily deserving of the 3rd spot, but you know what? I'll take it right now. And as we're going to see, Will, I think you're top of the heap of the 4-win teams, which does not put you out. You're still more than enough in the hunt here. I think I said last week that, Chaz, you had to get on your bike and start going for a ride, and you did step one. You took down Horst, who is still a playoff team, but these are the kind of teams that you want to take and knock out. How you did so, I mean, you had the quarterback 4 and the tight end 2 performance, but I'll be honest with you, even though he didn't bust out of the gates, you gotta love having CMC back. If he can come back in and Achane can start looking like I think some people think he can in the second half, with the Miami team starting to form a little bit more, you might have one of the better 1-2 running back punches in the league. Horst, the only person you had in the top 5, sadly, was on your bench. That was Pickens, who now with his new buddy, the 2 double Pickens set that they have in Pittsburgh. You also could have used Allen to bust through for you. He did fine, but you just needed 1 or 2 bigger performances to kind of come up to play on this one. But as I've said a bunch of times, you get the loss and you can still stay in the playoffs. Not the worst thing in the world. Chaz, you listened to me last week. Can you keep going on your run this week? I guess we'll have to wait and see. I keep talking about it, so we might as well show it. Now, no one has the asterisk yet, which means no one is technically out of it and no one is clinched, but not surprising. Just take a look at all that 500 or 1 game above, 1 game below, even only a couple games above get you where you need to go. Start paying attention to who's around you and how many points they've scored, because that is the tiebreaker if you haven't figured that one out. And so I would not be shocked if it comes down to a lot of that as we move in. So it's going to be matchup based, as it has been for a bit. 4 weeks left. Check out who you got left on your schedule. For us, I think in general in the pool, there's a couple interesting ones. Anytime 2 playoff teams get after it, I think we got to pay attention to that. Can Jake bounce back and beat a 5th place team to kind of put himself a little more standing? Obviously, hanging on to the playoffs for first in the door in the playoffs. Looks 3 versus 9, but we're only 2 games apart, so we can keep going over and over again. Even Will here, only 1 game down from a 4th spot. So I say it every week, this league always comes down to points scored, so you should be paying attention to not only who are you playing, but who can you get in there to get you those extra points, because even a loss, if you score a lot, actually could still be valuable. There's no other way for me to say it other than just to repeat myself over and over again. Every position decision is going to matter. Every waiver wire pickup we were made is going to matter. Every matchup is going to matter, because it's definitely coming down to a lot of tiebreakers and a lot of situational stuff. So I think we've already been paying attention, but Arizona, Tampa Bay on buys, plus the 2 teams who lit it up in the German territory in Carolina and the Giants. I'm assuming you already know that. Trade deadlines are coming, and you can tell because some people are throwing out some casts, I think, right now to see what they can catch. Always exciting times. Can't wait already. So best of luck, folks, in week 11.